This conference will now be recorded.
मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्या संप्रदाय कर्तृभ्यो वंश ऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहिता प्रज्ञानघनः प्रत्यगतो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। वेदान्तार्थविभासकाय गुरवे शान्ताय सन्न्यासिने नानावादी नगेन्द्रसङ्घपवये योगीन्द्रवन्द्याय च मोहध्वान्तदिवाकराय भगवत्पादाभिधाने तस्मै भाष्यकृते नमोऽस्तु सततं पूर्णाय बोधात्मने। यस्य निश्वसितं वेद यो वेदेभ्योऽखिलं जगत् निर्ममेतमहं वन्दे विद्यातीर्थमहेश्वरम्। So in explaining what are the different types of sannyas, renunciations, as well as the reason for their differences. So the teacher categorized these four sannyasas under two classes. The Kutichaka and Bahudaka under one class, Hamsa and Paramahamsa under the second class, other class. The reason is that Kutichaka and Bahudaka are because of Tivra Vairagya. The cause for Kutichaka sannyasa or Bahudaka sannyasa is strong Vairagya. And the reason for Hamsa and Paramahamsa sannyasa is stronger Vairagya, Tivra Tara Vairagya. So now, before we can understand what is strong and stronger Vairagya, we should be clear about what is Vairagya, and if this is Vairagya, then what can be called as weak Vairagya? Weak in the sense, Manda Vairagya. Manda. Like if you have to cook something and if it is kept on a fire whose flame is very slow, dim, so cooking may not take place and the food would remain raw. Like that, this is called as slow, Manda Vairagya. Basically, the idea of Vairagya is observing that no object of this world, of the other world, also has any capacity to really deliver happiness. And when this fact is seen clearly, the change in attitude, the change in understanding, the change in reactions and responses to the world is all Vairagya. Because even if there is any like or dislike, those likes and dislikes are controlled or even generated, nourished only by the idea that something has a value of happiness. So you are going to like something only because that object is likely to give you happiness. And even if there is any dvesha towards any person or any object, any situation, is because that object, person, or situation seems to be obstructing your happiness. So it is the value of happiness which generates raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes. So where all the likes and dislikes are resolved in through understanding, as a result, the person does not desire. Basically, in order that you desire something, some raga has to be there. Stronger the raga, intense is going to be the desire. Weaker the raga, weaker is going to be the desire. And whenever a desire is weak, it may surface, it may float up, but it will not create an action because we have several desires that come and go. But why do those desires necessarily not prompt us into a sequence of actions? Is because those desires then, though they come and go, they may be your fancies, they can be our whims and fancies, yet because those desires are not strong enough, they fail to create any sequence of actions. Okay. And why was that desire not strong enough? Because the raga dvesha is not strong. What happened? Not working. Well, I have a request to make that reminds me that those who can please put your mics off and turn the cameras off. It will be very helpful. Yes, kindly follow that. So mute your mics and turn off your personal cameras. Right. So there is a desire, and that desire is because of raga dvesha. Those raga dvesha are because of aviveka, that we will see. But the whole thing is that what now can be called as vairagyam is this. Then what can be called as manda vairagya was we have seen that yesterday in verse number 6. We will read that verse again and proceed further. पुत्रदारधनादीनां नाशे तात्कालिकी मतिः नाशे तात्कालिकी मतिः धिक् संसारमिति दृक् धिक् संसारमिति दृक् स्याद् विरक्तेर्मन्दता हि सा धिक् संसारमिति दृक् स्याद् विरक्. Okay, now it is not like that. धिक् संसारमिति संसारमिति दृक्स्यात् संसारमिति दृक्स्यात् विरक्तेर्मन्दता हि सा विरक्तेर्मन्दता हि सा. Okay. Okay. So what is called as mandata? Mandata means slowness, incapacity, weakness. All this is indicated by the word manda. Whenever a person faces any loss or any dukkham due to from his family, from his friends, from his relatives, from his workplace, and wherever if there is a loss of wealth, there is a loss of property, prestige, job, etc. At that time, the person feels far upon this world. Take samsara. I do not want this. I want to run away from here. I want to flee away from here. So such a person, then this is called as mandata. It is because of that virakti is manda. Sometimes people call it as markata vairagya as well as smashana vairagya. There are these two other terms also. Some places people use. Markata means vairagya, which is like a monkey, unstable, which is unstable vairagya. It's called as markata vairagya. And smashana vairagya means whenever there is somebody who dies, then the people generally have, feel like they are disillusioned. Look here, the world is like this. Everybody has to one day say goodbye to the world. Who is a friend and who is an enemy? After all, everybody is nothing more than just a heap of of flesh and bones, and that also will be reduced to the soil. Ultimately, everything has to go back to the earth and elements. All these things suddenly that person will. But how long does this thing also remain with him? As long as all the whole group is there in the crematorium, and when they come back, then everything is forgotten, and then the person falls into the rut of his raga dveshas again. And that is the reason why this manda vairagya is also called as markata vairagya as well as smashana vairagya. What is called as tivra vairagya, because of which there is Utichaka and Bahudaka sannyasa. Utichaka means where the person lives in a small little hut, or what do they call a kuti, a cottage. And a cottage is a very primitive shelter. Okay? It is a very primitive shelter. Primitive in the sense it may provide you little shelter against rain and wind and winter, but nothing more. That's why it is a kuti, simple. Nowadays we create palaces and then name it as kuti, kutia. Not that is not kuti, you can call it, but for all practical purposes, it is a place full of all the facilities. So the person just lives in a small cottage with bare minimum, not even, he cooks over there because as a sannyasi he will go for asking alms only once a day. That also it will come somewhere. Only once a day the person goes asking for alms, not even twice. Otherwise, this fellow sannyasi morning, then breakfast, then lunch, then at 4 o'clock once again, and then again at 8 o'clock dinner, which after which is coming 4 5 times a day. No, not like that. He lives over there, and then all his life is dedicated only to doing some intense tapas. Okay, he lives away from the settlement, not not very close to the settlement, little away on the outskirts of the village, etc. He lives all by himself, asahaya, without any sahaya, without any assistance over there. That is Kuti Chakra. And Bahudaka is a sannyasi who having initiated, who was initiated into the life of sannyasa, but he does not make a cottage anywhere, any residence. He is on a constant move, doesn't allow himself to create any cottage or anything anywhere. Keeps on moving. Every third day, fourth day, he has already changed his place where he lives. So now that is when the vairagya is tivra, intense, there is kuti chakra and bahutaka. Now he explains what is called as tivra vairagya in verse number 7. Kindly read that. Asmin janmani ma bhuvan. Janmani ma bhuvan. Putradharadayo mama. Putradharadayo mama. Itiyasu sthira buddhi. Itiyasu sthira buddhi. Sa vairagyasya tivrata. Sa vairagyasya tivrata. Together. Asmin janmani ma bhuvan. Putradharadayo mama. Itiyasu sthira buddhi. Sa vairagyasya tivrata. Asmin janmani. In this very life, I do not desire any family or anything, wife, children, house, career, or anything like that. Asmin janmani ma bhuvan. May I not have anything, any possessions, whether those possessions you claim your ownership or you claim your, belonging to you, your belongingness, and to the objects, animate or inanimate, whatever it is, ma bhuvan, may I not have. Ma bhuvan, what? Putra dara, dayo mama dara means a wife, in the other case, husband, etc. Putra dara, putra means son, children, the mama. No, I do not want. Itiya susthira buddhi, the one where this sankalpa, this resolution is firm, is unshakable, is steady. Susthira buddhi sa vairagyasya tivrata. This is called as the intenseness of vairagya. Intenseness. Okay? Strongness, strength of the vairagya. Itiya susthira. So this buddhi comes and goes to all of us. Whenever we are troubled by the world, that is what we feel. And in fact, we have heard many people even pray, God, may I not have a husband, a wife, a son like this in any other birth. But what about his birth? And nobody says about this birth. In next life, I don't want a husband like this, a wife like this, a child like this, son like this. The trouble. I don't want a life like this, at least in my next birth. So now this person, this seems to be Vairagya, but this Vairagya is talking about something of the next birth. Whereas that which is called as Tivra Vairagya is Asmin Janmani Eva Mahu. Asmin Janmani Eva. In this very life, I do not want anything like this. Mahuvan. Iti iti ya susthira buddhi, such buddhi, such a resolution, in the sense, such understanding, resolution is not on the strength of the ego, but there is this resolution on the balam, the strength of that resolution is viveka. Never forget that. Okay. Now, Achyutray Modak in his commentary says, Susthira buddhi. It was sufficient enough to say, Asmin Janmani Ma Bhuvan. May I not have it in this birth. This understanding, why don't you call this as the intense Vairagya? Why do you have to add the word Susthira as a Visheshana, as an adjective to the buddhi? Susthira buddhi, by saying buddhi, understanding, intelligence was sufficient enough. Why did you add? What is the prayojanam of adding that adjective? Because whenever an adjective is added, that means it has a function of doing some vyavartanam. It has to segregate it from something else. Otherwise, because there is a possibility of mixing it with something that is not really meant. Whenever we say, bring me a rose, one sentence, and then there is going to be another sentence, bring me a red rose. So now the word red is an adjective of the rose. By using the word red rose, what did the person achieve? That he has removed the possibility of someone bringing a yellow, a pink, a white rose, and therefore bring me a red rose. So the word red has removed the possibility of mixing it with any other rose. Okay? Like that, susthira buddhi, that word susthira, which has become the visheshana, what does it do? So here he says, Achyutray, tatrapi kshanikatva sambhavena purvatra ativyapti vyavrittaye vishinashti susthira iti. Now, a person who has manda vairagya also sometimes may come up and say, sometimes I'm fed up of this life and I feel that it is better not to have any family, any attachments, any property, anything to do. Sometimes we feel like that in this very life. So there is an ativyapti in the manda vairagya. There is a possibility of it getting over, what do they call, uh, slipping it into manda vairagya. So kshanikatva sambhavena. Why? Because even such buddhi may come to people and it may remain only for some little time. Only for some little time. Temporary. And therefore, that ativyapti vyavrittaye vishinashti. Susthira iti. Okay. So now we know what is called as Tivra Vairagya. This Tivra Vairagya is responsible for Kuti and Bahudaka Sannyasa. He will say that. Furthermore, in verse number 8, पुनरावृत्ति सहितो लोको मे मास्तु कश्चन इति तीव्रतरत्वं स्यात् मन्दे न्यासो न कोपिः together पुनरावृत्ति सहितो लोको मे मास्तु कश्चन इति तीव्रतरत्वं स्यात् मन्दे न्यासो न कोपिः. Okay. पुनरावृत्ति सहितो लोकः मे मास्तु कश्चन. May I not have any of this, worlds, loka, whether it is the Manushya loka or some Deva loka, Pitru loka, mastu, I do not want. Oh, you don't know the celestial worlds are full of pleasure. Maybe you do not have those pleasures in this mortal world, but what about those pleasures of the immortal world? We should go over there, whether they belong to this world or some other world. Mastu, I do not want anything. Why? And this, where one says Punaravritti Sahitaha Loka, because if whether it is the experience of this mortal world, your ordinary mundane world, or the extraordinary experience of the celestial immortal world, whatever it may be, how is it? Puniravriti Sahitaha, that it is limited and it is like getting caught up in a loop. Punaravritti. Again and again, born again, dies again, born again, dies again. No experience is truly timeless. Every experience is limited, and then that limitedness also means it is already pervaded, infested by dukkham, and therefore punaravritti sahitaha lokaha me mastu kaschana, I do not want. Iti tivrataratvam, this is the tivrataratva. What is it? Tivrataratva means this is, so earlier one was intense and this one is more intense. The earlier one was intense, that in this life I do not want. But what about next life? In next life, if it is going to be good, I don't mind. But at least in this life, I am not interested. That is Tivra. And Tivra Tara means whether this or next or any other, I do not want. Firm. It is Susthira Buddhi. This Buddhi also needs to be Susthira. Do not forget it. Tivra Taratvam. And there is a very important note in the fourth quarter of the shloka. Mande nyasona kopihi. There is no sannyasa advised when the vairagya is manda. No sannyasa. Because somebody, some intelligent fellow is going to come out and say, sir, there are two types of sannyas that you are talking. One is where it is the vairagya is tivra, intense. Then there is another type where the vairagya is even more intense. So vairagya is all that you require, na? All that you require is vairagya for sannyas. So suppose if there is vairagya which is temporary, which is temporary flimsy, in that vairagya also then sannyas should be possible. He says no. Mande, mande nyaso na gopi. In the manda vairagya there is no sannyas. So what should a person do? Then the person should strive for vairagya. How? Step by step. From yatamana vairagya to vyatireka vairagya. From vyatireka to ekendriya, and from ekendriya to vashikara samshya vairagyam. Further, in ninth, yatra shakti shaktibhyam, yatra shakti shaktibhyam, तीव्रे न्यासद्वयं भवेत्, तीव्रे न्यासद्वयं भवेत्, कुटीचको बहुधश्चेत्, कुटीचको बहुधश्चेत्, चेति उभावेतौ त्रिदण्डिनौ, उभावेतौ त्रिदण्डिनौ, यात्राद्य शक्तिशक्तिभ्यां, तीव्रे न्यासद्वयं भवेत्, कुटीचको बहुधश्चेति, उभावेतौ त्रिदण्डिनौ. Okay. Yatradi ashakti shaktibhyam. Now, when it was told to us about the Tivra Vairagya, which is the cause of Utichaka and Bahudaka sannyasa, then why do you have this classification? What is the cause of this classification that one is, there can be Kutichaka and the other one is called as Bahudaka, because occasion for both of them is the same, Tivra Vairagya. Then what is the factor that makes the difference? And here he says, Yatradi Shakti Shakti. If a person is not capable of undertaking, pilgrimages or some physically, what do they call, strenuous sadhanas, then for that person, what is advised? Kuti Chaka. But when a person has good sufficient strength to undertake the yatra, etc., then he should become Bahudaka. Okay, Shakti Tivre Nyasa Dvayam. Okay, Ubhavetau Tridandinam, and both of these, both as well as Bahudaka, both of them are Tridandi sannyasis. Okay, sometimes these Vaishnava teachers who carry a staff of three dandas, they say that we are better, superior, but that is not the case. When the Vairagya is Tivra and they are Bahudaka, then that person is told to carry a staff which is three bamboo shafts, not shaft actually, but shoots. They're not just tender shoots or anything. Three bamboos And there are wooden sticks you can call now. There are, various things, but it is called as danda. A wooden staff is called as danda. A bamboo staff is called as danda. So there are three bamboo staffs that are bound together and by a string, etc. And that is called as tridanda. Actually, the word danda means a punishment, or danda actually means an action of reformation. Danda. Okay. So when there is some criminal, etc., and he is given a punishment, that punishment is not given for revenge, but for the person to reform, to change. Okay. Reinforcement is of two types. One is a positive reinforcement and one is a negative reinforcement. When you want some form of behavior to be given up, then over there is, you give a negative reinforcement, in the sense it goes away. So like that there is danda. Then that tridanda means that there is reformation at three levels: body, mind, and speech. And therefore a sannyasi is someone who should not give any punishment, really speaking. I will give you a small little shloka which is said that there are various, what do they call, mistakes, aparadha, not crime really speaking, but what do they call, mistakes only we can say. Something that is wrong, that is done. Huh? Misdeed. A misdeed or something wrongdoing. Actually, this is not from any smriti, etc. I have randomly brought the shlokas for you. Parushyam anritam Parushyam anritam chaiva Vaishunyam chapi sarvataha Asambadha pralapascha Vamayam syat chaturvidham. There are four types of aparadha that take place through the speech. Parushyam. Parushyam means a speech which is very hurtful. Parushyam. Vaishunyam. Vaishunyam means a speech which exposes the weaknesses of others. Okay. Vaishunyam apisarvata asambadha pralapascha. Then talking which has got no meaning. Speech asambadha pralapascha. Vanmayam syat chaturvidham. Parusham anritam. Anritam means falsehood. So these are the four aparadhas at the level of speech. And now when there is an aparadha, when there is going to be something wrong, then it also needs correction. That correction is going to be danda. Then adattanam upadanam himsam chaiva vidhanataha varadaropaseva cha kayikam trividham mataha. Now something wrong that is done by the body physically, is also of three types. Adattanam upadanam, taking away something forcefully which does not belong to to you, that which means a theft, stealing, theft. Adattanam upadanam, robbing, stealing, looting, all this comes, extortion is adattanam upadanam. Himsa chaiva avidhanataha. Then doing himsa is violence, killing, hurting someone. Him avidhanataha, which is not granted by the Shastra. Himsam chaiva vidhanataha, paradaropa sevacha. Then coveting somebody else's woman, etc., in the sense unwillingly or whatever. Paradaropa sevacha kayikam trividham matam. Now this is called as the at the level of body. Paradravyeshu avidhyanam manasa nishtachintanam vitatha abhimanascha manasam trividham smritam. Now, we calculate somebody else's money, or we may even keep a watch on somebody else's money. Oh, he must be earning. He is like Paradravyeshu abhidhyanam manasa anishta chintanam. Arey uska satyanash ho jaye, let him suffer, etc. This is manasa anishta chintanam. Vitathabhimanascha. The pride, abhimana, which is mithya the ego, pride, prestige issues that we make, such, this is manasa aparadha, trividham smritam, these are the papas. Now they deserve some danda. So a sannyasi is someone who is so disciplined that he has kept the body, mind, and speech. His mission of life is to see to it that the body, mind, and speech do not fall into these aparadhas. He is ready. He gives danda to himself. So that's why he is called as Tridandi. So, and he holds, that is a symbol of that sannyasa, of holding the staff made out of three bamboos. Okay, Tridandi. Now, it is called Tridandis. Okay. Then furthermore, in number, so we should remember that whenever the Vairagya is intense and there is sannyas taken, then that sannyas, if the person is not very aged or physically fit and fine, then that person should become Bahudaka sannyasi. But how does he become sannyasi? He of course takes to Kashaya Vastra. He of course takes to the ochre clothes, but holding a staff, a begging bowl, and that staff is Tridanda. Okay, there. Further, number 10. Dvayam Tivratare Brahma Lokamoksha Vibhedataham Talloke Tattva Vidvamsvich Talloke Tattva Vidvamso Lokesmin Parahamsakaha. Okay. Dvayam Tivratare. When that Vairagya is intense, very intense, or more intense as we can say, because then the two types, Hamsa and Paramahamsa. Sir, what is the Vibhedaka? What is the factor that marks Hamsa and Paramahamsa as being different? So he says, now listen. Brahmalok Moksha Vibhedataha. When a person desires not going to celestial worlds for any pleasures, etc., but he would want to reach Brahmaloka, Satyaloka, for what? So that he will be liberated from there. Ultimately, whether the liberation takes place here or liberation takes place somewhere else, in both the cases, knowledge is the cause. It is the knowledge because of which a person will be liberated. But he says that I will go to that Brahmaloka, sit over there along with all the great sages, stay absorbed in samadhi, and when the knowledge takes place, I will be liberated along with Brahmaji, along with the Chaturmukha Brahma. This is, he wants liberation, but he sees a delay in that liberation by going to Brahmalok. Whereas the one who desires, he says, if the liberation is had, has to be had through knowledge, whether it takes place there in that, gathering of all the saints and sages, etc., or whether it takes place here in the most wretched place, how does it matter? I want liberation. Here itself, let me attain that knowledge here itself. Talloke tattva vidvamso lokesvin parahamsakaha. So the one who desires liberation by going to Brahmaloka is someone who is, that sannyasi is Hamsa. He is called as Hamsa, the swan. But whereas the one who says, right here, in this very life, let me be liberated, then that person is called as Paramahamsa. Okay? So Hamsa and Paramahamsa, both of them desire liberation, whereas one says liberation by going over there. Where do you want to go? He says that I want to finally have the darshan of Uma Maheshwar, Shiva and Parvati. And when I see them, I will keep my head on their feet. And when Bhagavan Shankar and Parvati gives me the Upadesha with their compassion, I will be liberated. So what does he want? He wants to go to that loka, to that world. But for what does he want to go to that world? For some sensual pleasures to be chased? No. There is no such. He wants liberation. But still he says that he would want to receive that knowledge from the mouth of Bhagavan, Shiva or Vishnu, etc. This is all Brahmaloka. Okay, Brahmaloka Mokha. So the one who wants to go over there and be liberated is called as Hamsa. Whereas the one who has Tivratara Vairagya and wants to be liberated here, now, in this very life. And therefore, that person is going to put in all sincere efforts. Such a person is called as Paramahamsa. This is how the Shastras define the word Paramahamsa. Okay. Etesham tu samacharaha. Etesham tu samacharaha. Prokta parasharasmritau. Prokta parasharasmritau. Vyakhyaने स्माभिरत्रायम्. Vyakhyaने स्माभिरत्रायम्. Parhamso vivichyate, Parhamso vivichyate, Etesham tu samacharaha, Prokta parasharasmritau, Vyakhyaने smaghiratrayam, Parhamso vivichyate. Okay. Now, etesham tu samachara. He says, etesham means etesham trayanam. Of these three, Utichaka, Bahudaka, and Hamsa. This whole thing about them, Vyakhyanam, explanation about them, has been given by us in another book, Parashara Smriti. In another book, there is a commentary on this Parashara Smriti by Vidyaranya Swami only. And over there, Kuti, Chaka, Bahudaka, and Hamsa, etc., all these divisions are discussed in details. What they should do, how they should live, what should be their daily routine, what is the course of what do they call? If there is anything that goes wrong, if the person does wrong by mistake, etc., then what should he do? All those things have been discussed over there in the commentary on Parashara Smriti. Vyakhyane asmadhiratrayam. But for our discussions now, atra means asmin granthe. In this very book, in the present discussion, we will analyze only what is called as Paramahamsa. We will analyze Parahamso Vivichyate. We will analyze what is Paramahamsa Sannyasa over here. Jajnasurjnanavanshcheti, Jajnasurjnanavanshcheti, Parahamso dvidhamataha, Parahamso dvidhamataha, Prahurjnanaya jijnaso, Prahurjnanaya jijnaso, Nyasam vajasaneginaha, Nyasam vajasaneginaha, Jajnasurjnanavanshcheti, Parahamso dvidhamataha, Prahurjnanaya jijnaso, Jnanam vajasaneginaha. Okay. Now, about this Paramahamsa Sannyasa also. That's why, if you remember, I had told you in just a day before or yesterday that make a flow chart and you will understand. Now, this will, because in the Paramahamsa Sannyasa also, there are two types. One is called as Vividisha Sannyasa and Vidvat Sannyasa. Jijnasuhu Jnanavanshcheti, Parahamso Dvidhamataha. the Paramahamsa is also of two types. One where that sannyasi, Paramahamsa sannyasi, is desirous of knowing Atma is Brahman. Knowing Atma is, he has a desire. I want to know how Atma is Brahman. I have Shraddha, but I really do not know how Atma is Brahman. And therefore, the one with desire, Jidnyasa, and the one who is enlightened, one who knows. So thus, Jidnyasu and Jnanavan, these are the two internal divisions of Paramahamsa Sannyasa. Prahurjyanaya Jidnyasa, and so also the Jidnyasa, that desire is for what? Desire is so that one will attain that knowledge. Wanting to attain that knowledge, Vidvat Sannyasa only will be the final end. Jidnyaso Nyasam Vajasat iti. But who has said like this? It is said by the Vajasaneyi Shakha, the people belonging to the Vajasaneyi, which is Shukla Yajurvedina. People, the Vajasaneyi Shakha is a recension of the Shukla Yajurveda, one branch of the Shukla Yajurveda. Over there, this is how they say that the Paramahamsa Sannyasa is of two types. One is of Jidnyasu, and the other sannyasa is of the knower, the enlightened. And Jnanaya Jidnyasa, Nyasam. So that the sannyasa which is done in order to attain the knowledge is indicated, given to us by the people belonging to the Vajasaneyi Shakha. Okay, that particular branch of Shukla Yajurveda. Furthermore, Pravrajino Lokametam, Pravrajino Lokametam, Ichchantah Pravrajanti, Ichchantam Pravrajanti. एतस्यार्थस्तु गद्येन एतस्यार्थस्तु गद्येन वक्ष्यते मन्दबुद्धये वक्ष्यते मन्दबुद्धये. Okay, now pravrajano lokamichantaha praprajanti. You said that the people belonging to the Shukla Yajurveda, they say like this. They say means it is, they are quoting the Veda, that there is a sannyasa for what? So that one will know Brahman, one will know that truth. So there is a sannyasa. Why was that sannyasa taken then? In order to know. Who said this? Shukla Yajurvedic people. Where did they get it from? Of course, from the Shukla Yajurveda. So it is Sapramanam. It is coming from the Shruti herself. And so, how is it said over there? Pravrajino lokamichantaha. That where, that loka, that existence which is attained by the sannyasis is desired, and therefore desiring that existence which is attained by the sannyasis, a person takes to sannyasa. Do you understand? So that loka is desired. Prabrajantihi. Etasyarthastu gatyena vakshyate. Now, this portion is going to be explained, but he says not in verse form, but in the prose form, gadyena. But why are you changing the mode from the verse to the prose? Manda buddhaye, so that people who cannot understand will be able to grasp with little ease. Manda buddhaye. Now for us, it is explained like this. Okay, so now we will see this Paramahamsa Sannyasa and what is that desire to know Parameshwara, Brahman, because of which there is Hamsa Sannyasa. Paramahamsa Sannyasa, but Vividishu. Now that is going to be the topic and it will be explained to us in the prose form. We will see that from tomorrow. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnah Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharya Keshavam Badaraya Suprabhashitau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gurura Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina